Thanks for tuning in. I'd love to know where you're watching from, so feel free to drop a comment below. Now, let's dive into today's story. The morning sun stretched across my office, casting long shadows as I reviewed the final numbers for the Harrison Bridge project. I'm 45 now, with salt and pepper hair and sharp features that make me look like I've been around a while. A quick glance at the wall behind me, covered in awards and certificates, shows it's true. I've turned plenty of failing infrastructure projects into successes. Mr. Harris? My assistant, Sarah, stuck her head in the door. The board meeting starts in 5 minutes. I grab my presentation materials, as smooth as I've always done it. Thanks, Sarah. Did finance send over the latest projections? Just came in, she said, handing me a sleek tablet. And congratulations in advance. Word is, the promotion's already decided. I gave a small smile but didn't let myself get too excited. Let's not count our chickens before they hatch. The boardroom went quiet when I began presenting. I laid out the numbers, explaining how the Harrison Bridge project had been bleeding money for months before I took over. Now, thanks to my redesign, we were saving the city millions and making the bridge stronger than ever. Remarkable work, Tom, Chairman Phillips said after my presentation. The board has unanimously decided to promote you to Senior Project Director, effective immediately. There were handshakes, congratulations, and smiles all around, but my mind was already moving to the next challenge. Success isn't a destination, it's just part of the journey. Back in my office, I dialed Rachel, my wife of 22 years. She picked up after the first ring. Hey, how did it go? Her voice was as upbeat as always. I got the promotion, I told her. I was thinking we could celebrate tonight, maybe head to Lame Zone? Oh, honey, I'm so sorry, she replied. I've got a client meeting that ran late. Rain check? I heard music and chatter in the background. It didn't sound like her usual design studio. Everything okay over there? It sounds pretty busy. Yeah, just at a cafe, going over some designs. Carlos is helping me with a new meditation room concept. You know how these creative meetings go. Carlos, the yoga instructor Rachel started seeing 6 months ago to manage her stress. I met him once, noticed how he smiled a little too much, and how his eyes lingered on Rachel's figure. Of course, just don't work too late. After hanging up, I opened our joint account statement and scanned the latest transactions. Another withdrawal. $5,000 marked as home renovation research. Strange choice of words for what should have been a simple design consultation. The drive home took longer than usual. A migraine was starting to pulse behind my eyes. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was quiet, the sleek, modern architecture of our home reflecting the setting sun. Family photos lined the hallway, a reminder of better times, our wedding, Emma's high school graduation, vacations we'd taken. It all felt distant now. I made my way to my home office to grab the medication for my migraine. The house's open floor plan meant I could hear Emma's voice from upstairs. No, Mia, my dad still doesn't know. Mom's boyfriend even picks me up from school sometimes when he's in town. I froze, my hand still on the drawer handle. Yeah, they're planning to move to California once Dad pays off my college tuition. Mom says Carlos has connections out there. I stayed still, trying to process the words. Emma sounded so casual, so confident. I gripped the edge of the drawer, trying to shake off the sudden wave of nausea. I'd always trusted Rachel, but now, everything was starting to add up. The long absences, the mysterious withdrawals, Emma's sudden interest in schools in California, despite Stanford being right down the road. The next morning, I kept up my usual routine, but my mind was elsewhere. At breakfast, Rachel talked about her latest design project, checking her phone under the table. I caught a small smile on her lips as she read her messages, and she angled the phone away when I glanced over. Matt called yesterday, she said casually. The startup's doing well. That investment really helped them grow. I stirred my coffee, trying not to show how irritated I was. Which investment? You know, from those early investors, she waved me off. Matt's hosting another business meeting today. Such a responsible brother. Matt, my younger brother, the family charmer. He could talk his way out of anything. Now, it seemed he was talking his way into something far worse. At work, I dug into the company's investigation firm database and pulled up a report on a man named Rul Levy, former military intelligence, specializing in corporate espionage, known for his discretion, the kind of man I needed for what was happening at home. I set up a meeting with him that afternoon in a coffee shop far from my usual haunts. We sat down, and I slid an envelope with my payment across the table. "Tell me about Carlos Knox," I said. Within days, Levy had gathered a disturbing amount of information. Carlos had never even finished his yoga instructor certification. His real estate license had been revoked in 3 states for ethical violations. The guy was a pro. He would get close to wealthy women, like Rachel, and slowly worm his way into their lives and finances. But it didn't stop there. Levy also uncovered that Matt's startup had received a significant investment 6 months ago, $300,000, funneled through a shell company named KNX Enterprises. I was starting to see the bigger picture. Everything Rachel had said, every withdrawal from our joint account, it was all connected. The neighbors, Linda Carlson and the Wilders, had their own secrets too. They were all part of it. I wasn't sure how long this had been going on, but I knew one thing for sure. Everything I'd built was being torn down from within. The betrayal was unfolding before my eyes, and now, I was the one who would fix it. I pulled up some satellite images on my tablet, looking at the $6 million property. "The down payment came straight from your joint account," Levy said, "laundered through your brother Matt's startup." Speaking of my brother, Matt's startup, perfect cover for all this. Levy handed over more files. "They're creating fake consulting contracts. Your wife Rachel transfers money to shell companies, which then invest in the startup. The startup pays Knox Enterprises for strategic planning, and that funds the California property and other expenses." I nodded, taking it all in. My mind was ticking through the details. The neighborhood involvement. The Carlsons received $40,000 marked as a personal loan. The Wilders got $35,000. Levy showed me the bank statements. It seemed everyone had their secrets. Linda Carlson? She's having an affair with her tennis instructor. Tom Wilders got serious gambling debts. My wife and Knox have been using this dirt to build a network of alibis. Levy hesitated before pulling out another file. "Your daughter Lily's role is more significant than we thought. She's not just helping with alibis or acting as a lookout. She's been helping Knox move money, delivering documents between accounts. She thinks she's just running errands for her mother, but she's actually been part of the money laundering operation." I stayed calm, but my grip tightened on the edge of the table. I had to document everything. Every transaction, every meeting, every phone call. After Levy left, I made a call to Julia Harris, the city's sharpest divorce attorney. She agreed to meet me right away. In her office overlooking the courthouse, I watched as she reviewed Levy's findings. "Your wife's been clever," Julia said, adjusting her glasses. "Having her father advise her was smart. Judge Carter knows all the loopholes in family court." "Tell me about his involvement," I asked, leaning forward. "He's been coaching her on asset division for months, pulling up court records, weekly meetings disguised as family dinners. He's been advising her on how to use your work schedule and emotional unavailability as leverage." "Can he influence the proceedings?" I asked. "He's still well-connected. He's already making calls to former colleagues to get a friendly judge assigned. But hiding assets will be his downfall. Once that gets out, no judge will touch this case." I thought about my daughter, Lily. I want to protect her education. Whatever happens, she needs to finish medical school. "We'll set up an irrevocable trust for her," Julia said. "They won't be able to touch it." Julia made notes. "But Tom, you understand what that means? Your daughter's involvement in their scheme will become part of the official record." "She made her choice," I said, my voice firm. "Actions have consequences." Over the next 2 weeks, I put my plan into action with military precision. Every evening, after Rachel left for yoga, I went through our financial records, documenting every suspicious transaction. The surveillance footage Levy gave me painted a clear picture. Rachel and Carlos meeting at Matt's startup office, acting bolder each time. Lily making bank runs, delivering envelopes between accounts. The neighborhood couples providing alibis while taking money for their silence. Levy reported, "Matt's getting sloppy with the paperwork. Look at these invoices, fake consulting contracts, inflated fees, and non-existent clients. All of it to launder stolen money through the business. Late one night, I overheard Rachel on the phone. "Everything's perfect," she said, laughing. "Carlos found the perfect house in Malibu. Once Tom makes that last tuition payment, we'll be set." No, he suspects nothing. Too busy with his bridges to notice. That's what makes it so perfect. He trusts me completely with the finances. The next day, I met with my bank's trust department. Janet Shin reviewed the irrevocable trust proposal for Lily's education. "Once it's set up, neither you nor your wife will have access to these funds." "Exactly," I confirmed. "Just keep Lily's GPA above 3.8, and the money can only be used for tuition or educational expenses. Move your other assets to the secure accounts we discussed, but leave the joint accounts open. We want to see who tries to access them." Later, I met Judge Carter at a charity gala, using it as a cover. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Rachel tells me you're working too hard. You should spend more time with family." "Actually," I said, "I've been thinking about estate planning. Given your experience in family law, I'd value your opinion on asset protection strategies." He seemed interested. "Always happy to advise family. Come by my office next week." I took the opportunity to test him. "I'll bring the financial records Rachel's been keeping." The widening of his eyes confirmed my suspicions. He quickly recovered, but I knew the trigger had been set. The following day, as I was in a project meeting, my phone buzzed. An alert from my bank. Someone was trying to make a large transfer from our joint accounts. I excused myself and called Levy. "They're moving now." "Knox just entered the bank on 5th Street, Levy confirmed. "Your wife's waiting in the car." "No need to follow," I replied. "Let's see how this plays out." Within an hour, my phone exploded with messages. Rachel asking about the bank system being down, Matt having issues with investment transfers, and Carlos, too, calling me about Rachel's accounts. I let them stew for 3 hours before responding to Rachel. The bank called about suspicious activity. They had to freeze everything temporarily. "We'll check later." Her response was immediate. "We need access now. Lily's tuition is due." I didn't reply, but instead called Lily's university directly, speaking with the bursar's office. "This is Tom Harris. There's been some confusion about my daughter's tuition payments. I understand there was an attempt to withdraw all funds from her account today, but it was blocked by trust restrictions." "Oh yes, Mr. Harris. That was blocked by the trust. Everything's fine now." "Excellent. Please ensure all future transactions require my direct authorization." When I got home that evening, Lily was waiting for me in my office. Her face was flushed with anger. "Mom told me everything. How you've been embezzling from your company. How you're trying to ruin her and Carlos because you're jealous." I stayed calm and turned my laptop toward her. "Your mother and Carlos tried to empty your college fund today. They've been planning this for months. The Malibu house, the stolen money, your education fund." Lily's face went pale as she saw the evidence. Bank statements, transfer records, surveillance photos. It was all there, clear as day. "The errands you've been running? Those were covers for their meetings and money laundering." Her voice trembled. "I didn't know." "Now you do," I said, standing up. "Your trust fund is secure. Keep your GPA above 3.8 and your education is guaranteed. More than they plan to leave you with." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but I held firm. "You made your choice. Now, you'll live with the consequences." Later that night, Rachel stormed into my office, Carlos right behind her. Her usual composure cracked. "What have you done?" "Those accounts were joint property." I looked up calmly. "Joint property? Like the money you were funneling to your boyfriend's shell companies?" Carlos stepped forward, his anger barely contained. "Listen, man, you don't want to do this. Think about your reputation." I laughed coldly. "My reputation? That's rich coming from a con man who's ruined 3 other women's lives. Ask Carlos about Helen Richards. Ask him about Mary Sullivan. Or any of his other victims." Rachel's eyes snapped to Carlos, the first crack in their united front. He quickly tried to cover up, but it was too late. "You wouldn't dare expose our daughter," Rachel hissed. "Your daughter?" I repeated, my voice freezing. "You planned to leave her with massive debt while you lived off her college fund in Malibu." She stammered, "We can work this out. For Lily's sake." Lily's education is secure in an irrevocable trust, I said. More than you plan to leave her with. I turned back to my work, coldly adding, check your bedroom when you get home. I left some paperwork for you and Carlos to review. The neighborhood was in chaos by then. I ignored the flood of calls coming in. Matt, Judge Carter, the Carlsons, the Wilders. All of them scrambling to understand what was happening to their carefully constructed scheme. I let it all unfold. The first strike had landed perfectly. Now, it was time for the real demolition. I never thought I'd be here, sitting alone in this apartment, watching my old life collapse around me. But here we are. It all started with the proof. Linda Carlson's marriage ended after her husband found out about her affair. Tom Wilder's wife discovered not just his gambling problem, but the many affairs he'd been hiding. And the one that started it all, the bribery scheme Judge Reynolds had been running? The FBI moved fast on that. By tomorrow, they'd have his reputation in shambles. I watched all of this unfold from the safety of my new place. The police cars outside Reynolds' house, the frantic calls and messages flooding my phone, mostly from Matt, Rachel, and a few others who had no idea what was coming. I ignored them all. I was focused on finishing what I'd started. At exactly 10 p.m., I got the confirmation I was waiting for. Rachel was home, and she'd found the package I left for her. The cameras I'd set up caught her opening it. Inside were divorce papers, evidence of fraud and conspiracy, and proof of every betrayal, including Emma's unwitting role in it all. I also included my resignation from the firm and my acceptance of a new position in Seattle. Everything was laid out for her to see, including the USB drive with recordings of our conversations. Shortly after, Carlos showed up with his yoga instructor, Serenity, of all people. Watching them read through the evidence, I could see his confidence falter. He didn't want to believe it. He's bluffing, Carlos snapped, but I could tell he was losing his nerve. He had no choice but to face it. I had the recordings, the property records, the shell companies. They were all there. Everything. Rachel, though? She wasn't as naive. We've lost, she said flatly, realizing just how much I'd known and how perfectly I had orchestrated their fall. She could still pretend to fight, but it was over, and I'd made sure of it. As I sat there, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Everything I had planned had come together flawlessly. Every move, every detail was calculated. No one could escape the consequences of their choices. Not even Emma, though I'd made sure her education was secure. But as for the rest of them, their worlds were crumbling, just as they deserved. The next morning, I walked into my office to submit my resignation. My new position in Seattle was already in place, and as for the Harrison Bridge project, I'd finished it. The paperwork was done, the plans ready for the handover. My boss tried to protest, but I just told him I'd completed it like every project I ever managed. I didn't need to stick around for more. By the time I drove away from the office for the last time, the damage was done. Rachel couldn't access the accounts. Carlos was buried in debt. Matt's startup had collapsed, and even the once prominent Judge Reynolds was facing public disgrace. Everyone I'd targeted was feeling the weight of their actions. Seattle was already waiting for me. I had everything set up, new life, new challenges. No more ties to the past, to the people who betrayed me. They could deal with the fallout on their own. And they would. That night, I received a text from Katherine Parsons, the one person who had helped me track everything. "It's done," she said. "Every asset secured. Every account frozen. They won't recover from this." I couldn't help but smile. 5 years later, things had only gotten better. Seattle had become my home, and my career was thriving. 3 major projects completed ahead of schedule, 2 industry awards, and a reputation for turning impossible situations into success stories. I was sitting in my corner office, reviewing blueprints for the next big project, when my assistant, Sarah, knocked on the door. "The mayor's office wants to fast-track the waterfront development project," she said. "Also, that background check on the new engineering firm came back clean." I nodded and kept working, but then Sarah hesitated. "Miss Parsons called," she said. "She said you'd want to know about some developments." I sat up a little straighter. Katherine had been keeping tabs on everyone, tracking the aftermath of my carefully planned destruction. Rachel's life had been a slow burn since I'd left. She'd bounced from retail job to retail job, her studio apartment now a shadow of the life she'd once dreamed of. Carlos was sitting in county jail awaiting trial, facing 20 years. And Matt? He was selling used cars in Phoenix after his startup failed. As for Judge Reynolds, he died last year, his reputation buried under decades of corruption. Your brother's finished his community service, Katherine reported. And Emma's doing well. She graduated medical school last month. She's starting her residency at Mayo Clinic. Emma had emailed me again that morning. I had read it and archived it without responding. She was doing well, but the distance between us was final. She understood now the price of betrayal. The news of Carlos's trial had been all over the media, his confident yoga instructor persona shattered. As I glanced at the headline, I felt a sense of justice. The people who had used me, lied to me, destroyed me, they had paid. Later, at a charity gala, I was honored as Engineering Executive of the Year. My date was Claire Thompson, a corporate lawyer who, like me, understood the value of emotional distance. We looked good together, poised and professional, no complications. As I accepted my award, I thought about how my greatest achievement wasn't a bridge or a skyscraper, but the meticulous dismantling of my former life. Every detail, every move calculated. The perfect execution of their betrayal. In the years that followed, I built new things. Projects that would stand the test of time, unlike the fragile structures of my past. And though I kept moving forward, I knew one thing for sure. When people betray you, sometimes the only solution is complete demolition.